Our Jeeps are back. We're talking FF7. We're talking Ever Crisis again and Sephiroth again, something we talked about not too long ago. Because we got an update for kind of what's coming out in the future of the game. They did a live stream yesterday, a pretty big one too. I think it's like an hour and something long. And we got to see like the roadmap for the game going forward up to like the first anniversary, which is in September. Now we're not here to like recap the whole roadmap going forward because there's a lot of stuff. For one, there's like a Monster Hunter event coming out like tomorrow, like a crossover, which is pretty damn cool. Like I like those crossover events when you have like different projects coming together. For one, like they do that a lot with like Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. I only know that because I play that game. But it's oftentimes with like Square Enix properties, and as far as I know, Square Enix doesn't have an attachment to Monster Hunter. I could be wrong, but that's kind of cool. I figure I mentioned that for people that maybe are fans of Monster Hunter and also FF7. Maybe that could compel you to come back to the game or something. I mean, it worked for me with like the Final Fantasy IX crossover. I hadn't played the game in a little bit whenever that event happened, and that got me definitely back into playing for a while. Also, before we get into it, I wanted to throw out like a quick kind of correction to yesterday's video where we were talking about, the Game of the Year stuff for Rebirth. I mentioned a few times in that video that Rebirth was the second highest rated game in the franchise. And that was true, but it is now a 92. And it was pointed out to me on Twitter by somebody that there's like several Final Fantasy games that are also 92, which I wasn't aware of. But initially, whenever we're first kind of getting the Metacritic scores for Rebirth, it was a 93, which did put it in the second place. And also looking at those Metacritic scores, like I didn't realize that Final Fantasy 12 was rated so high because it's one of my favorite Final Fantasies. Probably my fourth. So it's like 7, 10, 9, and then probably 12. And I acknowledge that it's not like a perfect game. Like it's definitely one of the weaker stories, I would say, for Final Fantasy. But I do like some of the characters, but mostly it's the world and the gameplay that I absolutely love about 12. But I didn't know it was on par with like OG FF7 in terms of Metacritic score and like Final Fantasy 10, and even Final Fantasy 6 and shit. Always like iconic games in the franchise. I'm glad to see that, at least maybe on the reviewer side of stuff, I don't know about user score, they seem to agree that it's pretty good. Anyways, on to the subject matter. So part of what we got from that big-ass live stream they did for Ever Crisis yesterday is that they said we're going to, in the future, like Season 2, I think it is, of the First Soldier story in Ever Crisis, we're going to get the backstory on Sephiroth's weapon. Sephiroth's Masamune, however the fuck you say it. I've heard it pronounced 30 different ways. I'm not exactly sure where at in the VOD that it said, because obviously it's a long-ass video, and it's purely in Japanese, there's no subtitles, so it's just kind of people like translating and talking about it online. I've seen it on like Gamefaqs of all things. People still use that apparently as like a forum or some shit. And then also on Reddit, of course. So this person's Reddit post just kind of has a recap of the upcoming stuff, but we're just here about the other section at the bottom that says, Other, young Angel has been revealed to be a key character of the First Soldier Episode 2, along with young Sephiroth. The story will reveal how Sephiroth obtained Masamune. No date for it. Likely will be introduced during the anniversary. And as far as I'm aware, that's kind of all we have right now for this, which I'm just very much looking forward to. This. If you guys have been following here on the channel for a while, the subject of like Sephiroth's sword's origin is something that I've always wondered. I've always been fascinated with where did the weapon come from. We did a video more than 3 years ago kind of talking about this subject. That was more theory-based, and it was pretty much just down to like the Dirge Cerberus online stuff. There's a character called Argento who gave Vice his pistol swords. And Sephiroth's sword in Remake / Rebirth and Vice's swords, weapons look kind of similar. There's little aspects of like the guard or something that's very similar. And the main point of that video was like, they could have designed those weapons 100,000 different ways, right? Like there could have been so many intricacies on how the weapons are designed, but they made them look somewhat similar, which is a bit intriguing. So maybe like potentially Argento or wherever Argento got the weapons from is where Sephiroth potentially got his weapon from. Obviously these days things are different because we have Ever Crisis. I don't even remember if we knew that Ever Crisis existed more than 3 years ago. But that, gives us more backstory. And the fact that we're seeing that Sephiroth is going to get it in his youth, it might not even pertain to anything from Dirge Cerberus or any characters from that. But we do get to see from the trailer that was at the end of the recent chapters for First Soldier that we do get to see a young Angeal. Also by itself is kind of fascinating just because we only have Angeal from Crisis Core. We haven't seen him in anything else yet, and getting backstory on like the friendship of Angeal and Sephiroth is going to be really, really interesting. And maybe potentially Genesis too. I don't know exactly when those three became friends. Obviously Angeal and Genesis grew up together in like Benora or whatever. But still, like getting to see like young Sephiroth, young Angeal go on missions together, that's fucking cool, man. Kind of actually a bit of an offshoot from that, we might get some more story or history for the Buster Sword. We obviously got some with Crisis Core. Angeal's dad had it made for him and had to like work off the debt or worked himself to death trying to repay the debt to make the sword, whatever it was exactly. But we do see young Angeal with it on his back, so that's kind of interesting. So that means like Sephiroth has been very aware of the Buster Sword for a long time, long before Cloud ever got it. Back on topic, Sephiroth's sword, the reason why the origins always fascinated me is simply because of the booklet from the original game. And Sephiroth's entry in the booklet reads, even amongst the elite troops of soldiers, Sephiroth is known to be the best. His past is locked away in a confidential file held by Shinra Inc. His giant sword, which only he can handle, has extremely destructive power. So me personally, my entire life, having read that booklet so many times as a kid, I've always interpreted that as the sword being magical in nature. Something about it. Something's powerful about it. And we see like other characters wield it, like Tifa trying to attack Sephiroth with it. Obviously, to no success. He just bodies her. But obviously, whenever Sephiroth is using it, things are different. Now, a lot of it could just be attributed to Sephiroth being very, very strong, and that obviously is true to a certain degree. But like, even though it's just like simulation in Crisis Core, he's fucking cutting pieces off the Junon cannon, right? And we see him in Remake, you know, cutting fucking portals to the Singularity and shit. And again, that might just be his power, but it could also be the sword to a certain degree. We've also seen Sephiroth be able to manifest the sword, and again, that could just be his own power. But like in Advent Children, when he's reborn, right? Kadashi eats the Genova cells, Cloud's coming down with an attack at the end of the movie. When he transforms into Sephiroth, he already has the sword and he blocks Cloud's attack, right? And he was in the goddamn live stream 2 seconds ago. So it seems like he can like summon the sword, and maybe that's just an ability of the sword. That all said, the sword might not actually be magical in nature. That's just how I've always interpreted that little snippet in the booklet, right? And that could just be like a fucking localization problem. But to say that the sword has extremely destructive power, if it was just a regular sword, that would be weird, right? Regardless of all that, we're going to finally have an origin story of how Sephiroth obtained it. Whether it's magical or not, wherever he found it at, got it at, had it made, whatever the shit happens, we're finally going to have that, dude. And this is like a childhood dream come true sort of thing. Like, right? This is something I've been waiting on for ever, dude. 25 plus years now, waiting for the origin of that goddamn sword. It's finally here. Is it going to be worth the quarter of a century wait? I don't know. Let's fucking see. I don't really have any ideas. Like, if the sword is magical in nature, then I could see, like, them finding it somewhere. An early mission, right? Him and Angeal, as we've seen at the end of the trailer, going on a mission together. Maybe they stumble across an old ruin or temple, some ancient place, or something like that, right? Temple of the Ancients sort of thing. Or maybe, like, the Gi tribes, they're very different when it comes to, like, Rebirth, you know, the remake trilogy and shit. There could be, like, an old fucking Gi ruin or some shit. I don't know. Like, that's my guess if it's, like, magical. And I guess it didn't have to be magical to be found in a place like that. And then maybe it could be something that's presented to him. Like maybe Hojo fucking crafts the sword for him. I don't know. Of course, pass off to you guys. What are your thoughts here? Is this something you've ever thought about, considered, gave a shit about, ever crossed your mind? And in terms of the origin of his sword, where he obtains it, how he obtains it, what are your thoughts? Do you have any guesses at all for where Sephiroth got his iconic... What's his weapon? What the fuck was I going to say? Where did Sephiroth get the pointy thing he killed Aerith with? That's what I'm trying to say. Anyways, that's the video. Subscribe to if you guys are new, so it's in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @DaveYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.